All right, so today we're diving deep into this guide all about how to sell successfully on Craigslist.
Oh, cool.
I think most people think of Craigslist as like kind of that old school way to buy and sell things.
Yeah.
You got Facebook Marketplace and OfferUp and all these shiny new apps and websites.
Mm-hmm.
But this guide is making a really strong case that Craigslist is still a really powerful tool, especially if you're looking to sell locally.
Interesting.
And if you want cash,
Yeah.
I think that's a big appeal for a lot of people.
Right.
So our mission today is to really pull out those gems of wisdom from this guide
Right.
and see what we can learn.
Okay.
And, maybe we could even apply some of these tips to other platforms.
Yeah.
But before we get too deep into the nuts and bolts, I'm
Yeah.
curious,
Yeah.
have you ever used Craigslist?
Oh, yeah, definitely.
okay.
I've used it to both buy and sell things, actually.
Oh, really? What kind of stuff?
Well, let's see. I
What have you bought or sold?
I bought a really nice couch on Craigslist a few years ago.
Oh, cool.
And let's see, I've sold a few things. I sold some old furniture that I didn't need anymore,
Oh.
and even a bicycle.
Wow.
Yeah, it's a great way to get rid of things you don't need and make some extra cash.
I'm totally with you on that.
Yeah.
I mean, it's funny because I think I probably underestimate how many people are actually still using Craigslist.
Right.
And I think this guide really drives that home. Like
Yeah.
it really emphasizes the fact that there's still this massive user base out there
Mm-hmm.
and it's hyper local, which I think is really interesting.
Yeah.
And I think one of the things that the guide immediately points out that I think is really important
Okay.
is that Craigslist has these strengths,
Mm-hmm.
but it also has some pretty significant limitations.
Right.
It's not trying to be everything to everyone.
Mm-hmm.
It knows its lane and it stays in it.
Right.
But I think it's really valuable to understand what Craigslist does well and where it kind of falls short so we can use it strategically.
Mm-hmm.
So let's start with the good stuff, the strengths.
Okay.
Like I mentioned, it's hyper-local.
Right.
You're connecting with buyers and sellers,
Mhm.
right, in your area,
Yeah.
which is huge for things that are difficult to ship.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
Like you said, that couch, imagine trying to ship a couch across the country.
Oh, my gosh.
It would be a nightmare.
Yeah, total logistical nightmare.
So Craigslist eliminates that headache.
Right.
There are no listing fees, which is always a plus.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the thing that really stands out to me, and this is something that I think a lot of people really love about Craigslist,
Okay.
is the emphasis on cash transactions.
Right.
You don't have to worry about waiting
Yeah.
for payments to clear
Mm.
or dealing with those online payment processing fees.
Totally.
It's just that
Yeah.
simple exchange of goods for cash.
Yeah. I remember when I sold that bicycle, I met the guy at a coffee shop.
We did the deal right there.
Yeah.
I mean, he handed me the cash, I handed him the bike, and that was it.
That's awesome. I
It
mean,
was so easy.
there's something really satisfying about that, like that immediacy of that transaction.
Definitely.
I think that's a big draw for people.
Mm-hmm.
But, like we said, it's not all sunshine and roses with Craigslist.
Right.
The guide doesn't shy away from the limitations.
Right.
And I think that's really important because it's tempting to think that any platform can do it all,
Yeah.
but that's just not realistic.
Mm-hmm.
So let's talk about those limitations.
Okay.
First off, the reach is limited.
Mm-hmm.
Unlike those national marketplaces,
All right.
you're really confined to your local area,
Yeah.
which can be great for certain items, like that couch,
Right.
but not so great if you're trying to sell something really niche or specialized.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And there's no built-in payment system.
Right.
So you're kind of on your own
Yeah.
when it comes to handling the money side of things. Yeah, and that can be a little bit scary for some people,
Oh, absolutely.
especially if you're not used to dealing with cash transactions.
Right.
Or if you're worried about safety.
And the interface is pretty basic,
Yeah.
which can be a good thing. It's simple, it's straightforward, it's easy to use,
Right.
but it's not exactly flashy.
Yeah, it's definitely not winning any design awards.
Right. But it gets the job done.
Yeah.
And of course, there's always the risk of scams.
Yeah.
And the guide has a whole section on that,
Oh, yeah.
which is a little bit unnerving.
I bet.
But it's also really valuable
Mhm.
because it makes you aware of those red flags and helps you stay safe.
Right. It's all about being informed
Exactly.
and knowing what to look out for.
So I think the key takeaway here is that Craigslist is a powerful tool,
Mm-hmm.
but it's not a magic bullet.
Right.
It's all about understanding its strengths and weaknesses
Yeah.
and using it strategically to achieve your selling goals.
Totally.
So now that we've laid that foundation, let's dive into the heart of the guide.
Okay.
and start exploring those tips for creating those killer listings.
All right. I'm ready.
Because I think that's where the real magic happens. You know, like, how do you take your item and present it in a way that makes people say,
Yeah.
I need to buy that?
Right.
So the guide kicks things off
Okay.
with a really simple but powerful concept.
All right.
And that is the importance of a compelling title.
Interesting.
And I think the example they use in the guide is brilliant.
Okay.
They talk about selling a KitchenAid mixer,
Okay.
and they present two different titles.
All right.
The first title is just like,
Yeah.
Mixer, great deal.
Oh my God.
All caps, lots of exclamation points.
Yeah.
Just kind of a mess.
Right.
And then they show you the second title, which is something like
Okay.
KitchenAid Artisan Stand Mixer, excellent condition.
Wow.
So much better,
Yeah.
right? It's clear, it's concise, it's descriptive.
Mm-hmm.
It tells you exactly what you need to know,
Right.
right? And it presents the item in a professional light.
Totally.
And I think that's a really important point.
Yeah.
Because even on a site like Craigslist,
Yeah.
first impressions matter.
Absolutely.
You want your listing to look good.
Right.
You want it to stand out.
Mm-hmm.
You want it to convey a sense of quality and trustworthiness.
Right.
And that starts with the title.
Yeah. I've definitely seen my share of those all caps crazy exclamation point titles.
Yeah.
And I just scroll right past them.
I think we all do.
Yeah.
And I think the other thing that the guide emphasizes, which I think is really smart,
Yeah.
is thinking like a buyer.
Right.
When you're crafting that title,
Yeah.
what words are they going to be searching for?
Mm.
What information are they looking for?
Right.
So if you're selling that KitchenAid mixer,
Yeah.
you want to make sure those key words are front and center.
Mm-hmm.
KitchenAid, artisan, stand mixer,
Yeah.
because that's what people are going to be typing into that search bar.
Yep.
So beyond the title,
Okay.
the guide also stresses the importance of a detailed and honest description.
Right.
And I think honesty is really key here
Mm-hmm.
because it's so easy to get caught up
Yeah.
in trying to sell your item
Right.
that you might be tempted to downplay some flaws or exaggerate some features.
Mhm.
But I think in the long run, it's so much better
Yeah.
to be upfront and transparent.
Right.
Because you don't want someone showing up to buy your,
Yeah.
gently used couch.
Right.
And it looks like it's been through a war zone.
Yeah, I've definitely been there.
Right.
I bought a coffee table once that was described as like new,
Oh.
and when I got there, it was covered in scratches,
Oh, no.
and it was so disappointing.
I bet.
Yeah, so honesty is really the best policy.
Totally.
Yeah.
It builds trust.
And speaking of building trust, can we talk about the power of good photos?
Oh, yes. Photos are everything.
I mean, it's like the saying goes, a picture's worth 1,000 words.
Right.
And on Craigslist, that's especially true. Definitely.
Because potential buyers are making those split-second decisions
Yeah.
based on those visuals.
Mm-hmm.
So the guide really emphasizes the importance of high-quality, well-lit photos.
Mm-hmm.
Natural lighting is key.
Right.
Multiple angles showing the item from different perspectives.
Mm-hmm.
And this is something I love.
Okay.
They even suggest using a coin for scale,
Oh, that's a good idea.
right? Because sometimes you see these photos
Yeah.
and you're like, is that a tiny table or a giant table? I can't tell.
Right. It's all about perspective.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So the Caddick coin for scale is just a really simple but effective way to give people a sense of the item size.
Yeah. That makes sense.
And I think the other thing that the guide stresses when it comes to photos is just taking the time to stage your item. You don't want a cluttered background.
Right.
You don't want it to look messy or disorganized.
Yeah, you want it to look its best.
Exactly. You want to present it in the best possible light.
Mm.
So it's worth taking a few extra minutes.
Right.
But to make sure that your photos are top notch.
Yeah, it'll definitely pay off in the long run.
And then, of course, there's the question of price,
Oh, yeah.
which is always a tricky one.
Right.
We all want to get the best price possible for our stuff.
Mm.
But the guide really stresses the importance of being realistic,
Yeah.
doing your research,
Mm.
seeing what similar items are selling for in your area,
Right.
and being willing to negotiate.
Mm-hmm.
Because I think a lot of times on Craigslist,
Yeah.
it's that back and forth,
Right.
that friendly haggling
Yeah.
that leads to that win-win situation
Well, exactly.
where both the buyer and seller feel good about the deal.
Mm-hmm.
So I think the key takeaways here
Okay.
from this first part of the guide
Yeah.
is that Craigslist is still a powerful tool,
Mm-hmm.
but it's important to understand its limitations
Right.
and to use it strategically.
Yeah.
And when it comes to creating those killer listings,
Mm-hmm.
it's all about those three key elements.
Yeah.
Compelling, title detailed, and honest description,
Yeah.
and high-quality photos.
Mm.
Those are the ingredients for Craigslist success.
Awesome.
So now that we've got those basics down,
Okay.
let's move on to the next part of the guide
All right.
and start exploring some of those more advanced strategies.
Cool. I'm excited.
Because I think that's where things get really interesting.
Yeah.
You know, like, how do we take our Craigslist game
Yeah.
to the next level?
Right. So one of the things that really stood out to me in the advanced strategy section was the advice about renewing your listings.
Ah, interesting.
You know, it's easy to kind of create a listing and then just forget about it.
Yeah, totally.
But Craigslist listings, they tend to get buried pretty quickly.
Right.
So the guide recommends renewing your listing every few days.
Okay.
Just to kind of bump it back up to the top of the search results.
Oh, I see. So it's like a little refresh button.
Exactly.
Just bringing those eyeballs back to your listing.
Exactly. You're giving it a second chance.
Yeah. Okay, that's a good tip.
And another thing that I thought was really interesting was the idea of using social media to promote your Craigslist listings.
Oh, wow. Okay, tell me more about that.
Yeah, so, you know, you've got all these friends and followers on Facebook and Instagram and Twitter, and chances are some of them live in your area.
Right.
So why not tap into that network
Yeah.
and share your listings with them?
I mean, it's free advertising.
Exactly.
Okay, I like that.
You know, it's just another way to get those eyeballs on your items. And the guide suggests joining local buy and sell groups and forums.
Okay.
Which I think is a really smart idea because you're reaching a hyper-targeted audience.
Right.
People who are already interested in finding deals in your area.
Exactly. I mean, it's like you're going straight to the source.
Exactly.
The people who are most likely to be interested in your stuff.
And to make it even more enticing, the guide suggests offering a small discount or a bonus item for people who mention your social media posts.
Oh, that's smart.
Yeah, it's just a little incentive to encourage people to spread the word.
Okay, so social media promotion, check.
Check.
Now let's talk about communication.
Okay.
Because I think that's another area where people can really trip themselves up.
Yeah, definitely.
So the guide has some really good advice on how to communicate effectively with potential buyers.
All right, let's hear it.
So first and foremost,
Yeah.
be prompt.
Okay.
When someone sends you an inquiry,
Yeah.
respond as quickly as possible.
Right.
Because, you know, nobody wants to wait around for days
No,
to
totally.
hear back from a seller.
Yeah, it's all about that first impression.
Exactly. And the guide also emphasizes the importance of using Craigslist's email relay system,
Right.
which I think is a really smart idea because it protects your privacy. You're not giving out your personal email address.
Right.
And it helps to prevent spam.
Totally.
So email relay, double check.
Double check.
All right, now let's talk about safety. Because I think that's probably top of mind for a lot of people.
Yeah, it's definitely a concern.
Especially when you're dealing with strangers online.
Right.
So the guide has a whole section on safety tips. And I think the most important one is to always trust your gut instinct.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
If something feels off about a potential buyer
Right.
or a transaction,
Yeah.
just walk away. It's not worth the risk.
Better safe than sorry.
Exactly. And the guide also recommends meeting in public places
Right.
during daylight hours,
Yeah.
preferably in well-lit areas with lots of people around. They even suggest meeting at a police station parking lot.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Which I think is a really good idea, especially for higher value items.
Yeah, I can see that.
Or if you're meeting someone at night. And the guide also recommends bringing a friend or family member along for extra security.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
Just to have that extra set of eyes and a backup plan.
Right.
And of course, never give out your personal information.
Oh, yeah. Absolutely.
Like your social security number or your bank account details. If a buyer asks for that kind of information,
Yeah,
that's a huge red flag.
definitely.
And then, of course, there's the question of payment methods.
Yeah.
And the guide is very clear on this.
Okay.
Cash is king.
Cash is king.
No personal checks.
Yeah.
No complicated money orders.
Right.
No shady online payment schemes. Just good old-fashioned cash.
Okay.
It's the safest and most straightforward way to handle payments on Craigslist.
And it eliminates the risk of bounced checks and fraudulent money orders and all those scams that people try to pull.
Exactly. And I think that's a really important point to emphasize.
Yeah.
Because scammers, they're always trying to come up with new and creative ways to trick people out of their money. So it's just important to be vigilant and to always err on the side of caution.
And if something feels off,
Yeah.
just trust your gut.
Absolutely.
You walk away.
Okay, so we've talked about communication and safety. Now let's move on to another really important aspect of Craigslist selling. And that is presentation.
Interesting.
Because I think a lot of times people underestimate the importance of making their items look good in those photos and descriptions.
Yeah.
It's all about staging those Craigslist glamour shots.
I love that.
So the guide has some really great tips on how to do that.
All right, let's hear it.
So first and foremost,
Okay.
clean your item.
Okay.
Before you even think about taking a picture.
Right.
Get rid of any dust or dirt.
Mm-hmm.
Make sure it's in working order.
Yeah.
If it's something electronic or mechanical.
Mm-hmm.
And then think about how you can arrange it in a way that's visually appealing.
Yeah.
You know, you don't want it to look cluttered or messy.
Right.
You want it to be the star of the show.
And what about the background? Does that matter?
Oh, yeah. The background is super important.
Okay.
The guide suggests using a clean and uncluttered background, ideally a neutral color, so that your item really pops.
Okay.
You don't want it to be competing with a bunch of other stuff in the background.
Right.
And of course, there's lighting.
Oh, yeah.
Lighting is everything.
Mm-hmm.
The guide recommends using natural lighting whenever possible. Take photos outdoors on a cloudy day.
Okay.
Or near a window with indirect sunlight. Avoid those harsh shadows and glare that can make your item look distorted or unappealing.
Okay, good tips.
So basically, treat your Craigslist photos like they're going in a magazine.
I love it.
All right, so we've talked about the photos. Now let's talk about the description.
Okay.
Because the description is your chance to tell the story of your item.
Right.
And to convince potential buyers why they need it in their lives.
I like that.
So the guide suggests starting with a clear and concise overview.
Okay.
Tell potential buyers exactly what the item is, what it's made of, what condition it's in. Any key features or specifications, be as specific and detailed as possible.
And honesty is key.
Honesty is key.
Yeah.
Don't try to downplay any flaws or damage. Be upfront and transparent.
It'll save you a lot of hassle in the long run.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And the guide also recommends mentioning your reason for selling.
Oh, interesting.
If it's relevant.
Yeah.
Because it can help to personalize the transaction and make the buyer feel more connected to the item.
Right.
So, for example, if you're selling a piece of furniture because you're moving, or you're selling a guitar because you no longer have time to play it,
right.
Those kinds of details can add a human touch to your listing.
I like that.
And then, of course, don't forget to include a clear call to action at the end of your description.
Ah, yes, the call to action.
It's like the grand finale of your Craigslist symphony.
I love that analogy.
So the guide recommends ending your listing with a simple and direct instruction.
Okay.
Like, email me if you're interested. Or text for a quicker response.
Right.
That way potential buyers know exactly how to reach you.
Yeah.
And what to expect in terms of communication.
Makes sense.
So there you have it. Those are some of the key strategies.
Yeah.
For creating those truly effective Craigslist listings. But the guide doesn't stop there.
Oh, really?
It also delves into some really interesting ethical considerations.
Ethical considerations.
Which I think is something we often overlook in the pursuit of a good deal.
Yeah, definitely.
So let's talk about that.
Yeah, I think it's easy to get so focused on like the nuts and bolts of buying and selling that we forget about the ethical implications.
Totally.
So I'm glad the guide addresses that.
So what are some of the key ethical guidelines that the guide highlights?
Well, first and foremost, it stresses the importance of honesty.
Okay.
And transparency in your dealings with other users.
So like no trying to pass off that knockoff designer bag as the real deal.
Exactly.
Or hiding damage to an item just to make a quick sale.
Right. I mean, it's tempting.
Yeah.
But ultimately, it's not worth it.
Right. It's going to come back to bite you.
Yeah, because it erodes trust.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And trust is everything on Craigslist. And the guide also talks about being respectful of other users' time and energy.
Right.
So like don't send out mass inquiries or lowball offers just for kicks. If you're not genuinely interested in an item, don't waste the seller's time.
Yeah, be considerate.
Exactly. And on the flip side, if you're the seller, be responsive to inquiries. Be willing to negotiate in good faith.
Right.
It's about creating a positive and respectful experience for everyone involved.
And the guide also reminds us to be mindful of our impact on the local community.
Oh, okay. How so?
Well, for example, don't sell illegal or dangerous items.
Okay.
Like weapons or drugs.
Oh, obviously.
And be mindful of local ordinances and regulations regarding the sale of certain items.
So like firearms or alcohol.
Exactly. Or even certain types of plants or animals.
Interesting.
It's about being a good neighbor.
Yeah.
And respecting the laws and regulations of your community.
Makes sense. So I think we've covered a lot of ground here today.
We have.
I mean, we've gone from the really practical tips for buying and selling to these deeper reflections on community and sustainability and ethics.
Yeah, it's been a really interesting conversation.
I think so, too, and I hope our listeners have found it valuable.
Me too.
So as we wrap things up, I just want to leave our listeners with one final thought.
Okay.
Craigslist can be a really powerful tool.
It can.
But it's important to use it wisely.
Absolutely.
Be informed, be respectful, be safe, and most importantly, have fun.
Yeah, because it can be a lot of fun.
It can, and you never know what treasures you might find.
That's true.
So happy Craigslisting, everyone.
Happy Craigslisting.